The second edition of the AFCFTA Business Forum, dubbed Biashara Africa, is being held in Kigali, Rwanda, under the theme Dare to Invent the Future of Africa We Want. Welcome to this special episode of Invest Rwanda, where we engage the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Antoine Kajangwa. Thanks so much, Antoine, for joining us here on CNBC Africa.
Thank you.
Just to kick us off, what do you expect from the second edition of the AFCFTA Business Forum?
Sure. We expect a very vibrant, very interesting forum. As you've stated, it's the second edition of the AFCFTA Business Forum that's been redubbed the Biashara Africa Forum or Trade Africa Forum. So it's going to be an exciting 3 days, full of conversations, exhibition, engagement on the possibility that is the AFCFTA and where we are today, nearly 6 years after the agreement was signed.
And at the core of this business forum, there's the conversation on the AFCFTA Adjustment Fund. Perhaps you could speak to us about that. And all the beneficiaries are also collaborators as far as this fund is concerned. Sure.
Yeah, the AFCFTA Adjustment Fund is a really exciting product and instrument of the AFCFTA program as a whole. Interestingly, actually, the Adjustment Fund is hosted here in Kigali, Rwanda. There's a host country agreement between the government of Rwanda, the AFCFTA Secretariat, and the main funders of the fund, which is the Africa Export-Import Bank, Frexim Bank. This fund is and was established to mitigate the impact of tariff liberalization or the removal of customs duties that result from this type of arrangement. As you can understand, removal of customs for trade of all goods in Africa will have a significant impact on our economies, on our government revenue, on businesses and how they compete. And so the Adjustment Fund is there to really help and support governments to make that adjustment to liberalization, but more importantly, to help the private sector adjust and grow and retool and reskill and find the right equipment and skills and expand to be able to take advantage of the AFCFTA market. So it's a game changer. It's an important fund that will help in the implementation process of the AFCFTA, and we're looking forward to see it start and contribute.
Brilliant. And when we talk of resource mobilization as far as Rwanda is concerned and concessional finance for this adjustment fund, how prepared is Rwanda on that front, and also in terms of public and private partnerships to foster more benefits for African businesses? Sure.
Yeah, no, the fund, as you've rightly stated, provides both concessional and commercial terms and financing for businesses. And so it's really a matter of ensuring that our private sector is ready, that they have projects and businesses that are ready to take advantage of this financing availability. Already the fund has been capitalized with $1 billion US dollars by the Frexim Bank. We expect more resource mobilization efforts to yield additional capital into this fund. And it's really here to ensure that it can benefit Rwandan businesses, but not even just Rwandan businesses. I believe the Adjustment Fund is established here in Rwanda because of the conducive business environment in the country, because of the efforts to establish a financial center in Rwanda that can allow for this capital to be deployed across the continent. And so even businesses as far as Nigeria, Ghana, Lesotho, Botswana, and elsewhere across the continent can take advantage of this fund, and we really expect businesses to leverage on this availability.
It's a big thing that the second edition is happening in Kigali, Rwanda. Therefore, looking at Rwanda specifically, what opportunity does this present for this event coming to Rwanda, and how does it position Rwanda as a regional financial hub?
Sure. As you know, Rwanda is a premier meetings destination. So even that in itself is a testament to Rwanda's efforts to establish itself as a venue for meetings. So the Biashara Africa taking place here is important. Secondly, it's also an important logistics and travel hub. and so it's able and facilitates travel into the country. Thirdly, Rwanda is also an important trade and investment hub, precisely because of what you've just alluded to, that we're establishing a financial center and a financial ecosystem that can allow for businesses to thrive, to secure financing deals here through the Adjustment Fund, as we've just discussed, but also other funds and other financing options that are available. And so we believe Rwanda is well positioned to be able to continue to champion the AfCFTA more broadly, but also private sector engagement. We believe that the agreement was not just a piece of paper. It is a document, it is legal instrument, yes, but it's more than that, an avenue to allow for our businesses to take advantage of better terms of trade, better investment climate across the continent. And if we can play our part as Rwanda in spearheading those efforts through our leadership and through our leaders on the continent, then we believe we'll be able to see the Africa that we want and that we continuously talk about.
It's good that you mentioned that when you speak of the conversation on the Africa that we want in 2063, as far as the AfCFTA goals are concerned, looking at the movement of trade, movement of goods, and free movement of goods within Africa and people as well. There has been conversations within that, looking at where we are at the moment. How has been the strides that have been done so far, and what needs to be done in order for Africa to achieve this very ambitious goal?
Sure. If I can paint you a picture, because we always start from saying 2063, where do we want to see Africa? And even aligning it with Rwanda's own domestic development agenda, Vision 2050, we believe that we'll have a prosperous and fast-moving continent, not just country, but a continent that has high level of economic development, where citizens are able to achieve their wishes and aspirations. And so every country on the continent should be able to have a high-income economy by 2063. That can only be achieved when we open our markets and when we integrate as countries and as regions across the continent. And so we believe this is the beginning of that process. We believe that through dismantling these barriers to trade, both for goods and services, then we'll be able to achieve the aspirations that every country has and desires for its citizens.
And collectively, what needs to be done in terms of aligning to this goal, looking at now not only Rwanda, but African nations as a whole? Where do we start?
So the most important thing is implementing the AFCFTA and implementing this agreement. And that's what a forum like the Business Forum does. It holds government accountable to say, what you signed, we need to see it in implementation. And I think the AFCFTA has done a good job. If you recall, in 2018, the agreement was signed here in Kigali, in this very building. And so it's great that 6 years later, we're talking about implementation. How do we fast track that implementation? And so we believe that by implementing what we have signed, by showing that it's possible, and indeed trade has started to happen, it is happening on the continent. How do we get all of the private sector working towards taking advantage of this agreement? But there's also other structural issues that countries have to address at a national level, whether it's increasing productivity, raising the level of skills, diversifying their economies, their export base. So there's a lot that countries have to do nationally, and then there's what we have to do together collectively. And the AFCFTA implementation is one of the important regional initiatives we should take together.
When you look at some of the pertinent issues being discussed at the Biashara Africa Business Forum, there's the issue of agriculture, agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, as well as digital technologies. How is Rwanda specifically supporting these sectors at a domestic level?
We talk about pharmaceutical. I believe Rwanda has been a leader when it comes to advancing pharmaceutical production, but also ensuring that there is harmonized regulatory environment on the continent through its support of the Africa CDC, through the establishment of the Africa Medicines Agency, which will be here in Kigali, Rwanda, but importantly through its partnership and investment into the BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine manufacturing plant here in Kigali as well. And so we really see pharmaceutical as an important product for the African continent, one that is important for us to recapture in terms of production, in terms of exports on the continent. When it comes to agro-business and agro-processing, Africa has a substantial amount of the world's arable land, and yet we still import a significant amount from the rest of the world. So there's an opportunity here for investment, for more self-sufficiency, for growth of the agricultural sector, to benefit a lot of citizens, really from low-skilled to high-skilled, and also drive in private capital into the investment opportunities here. Digital economy. I mean, Rwanda has really been a leader in ensuring that there is fiber optic connections across the continent, that across the country, that we are innovating in the right areas, that we are ensuring that there is payment systems that can interoperate, that can work together, and that e-commerce is driving our future business in Rwanda, but also across the continent. So Rwanda is very much on the table in these discussions. We want to ensure that we drive those discussions from a regulatory standpoint, but also that our businesses that are established here take advantage of the opportunities that this agreement provides. And
from a trade perspective, how is the Rwandan national trade policy aligned to the goals of AfCFTA, as well as to make sure that there's free movement of goods as well as people, even within the East African community, for a start?
So let me take you back a bit. Even before the trade policy, the National Strategy for Transformation and even our Vision 2050 both outlined the importance of Rwanda integrating regionally with its neighbors and expanding its market for Rwandan businesses and Rwandan products. And so the AfCFTA is part and parcel of that strategy, of those priorities. The EAC, of course, is our closest regional economic community that we trade with substantially, in addition to ECAS, the Economic Community for Central African States, COMESA, the Common Market for East and Southern Africa. And so regional integration is part and parcel of our national development agenda, but even our trade policy. And really for basic interests, really here to say that we need to create linkages across borders. We need to develop regional value chains for our businesses. They need to be able to easily cross and transact with their neighbors in Uganda or in Kenya or in Tanzania and elsewhere, really ensuring that we're able to take advantage of a larger market. People always say that Rwanda is a small market, but when you look at the various communities that we're involved in, you're looking at a market of 1 billion people. It's then about how do you improve on logistics, how do you improve on the regulatory environment so that businesses can take advantage.
Thank you so much, Antoine, for creating time to speak to us, the Principal Secretary for Trade and Industry in Rwanda. And indeed, the AfCFTA presents a significant opportunity for Africa with an aim of creating a single market for 1.3 billion people in Africa and a joint GDP of $3.4 trillion US. Thank you for tuning in on this episode of Invest Rwanda. Until next time, goodbye for now. I've been your host of Flora Gemuki.